Well, folks, welcome to BPTV, Belco Party TV, and I'm interviewing one of our party members now, a resident of Cook, a motor enthusiast, lives with his wife and 3 young children, and he's been looking pretty critically at this bin trial the ACD government's been running. So welcome Nikolai and thank you very much for appearing on BPTV, mate.
Thank you very much for having me, Bill, and thanks to Bailey for having me.
No, it's nice of you having him, isn't it, Bard? Yes, that's all right. Well, Bailey, of course, eats scraps, as does his colleague Honey, and so we tend not to have need to put a lot of scraps in the bin because he eats it, and my wife and I tend to just bung things down the back of the yard in a sort of compost bin, and understand you do that with your family.
Yep.
But you've been involved in this trial.
Yep.
And how do you think, what's the idea behind it? Why has the local government done it? And do you think it's actually worked? Or is it just a cost-saving measure?
Hard to say if it's actually worked. I mean, for us it hasn't worked terribly well, and I know of some others who it hasn't worked terribly well for.
Why is that?
Because we're ending up with overfull bins is a big problem, because they've reduced the weekly garbage collection to fortnightly collection.
That's the red bin, is it? The general household?
Bin, yeah. Or I think they used to have a dark green lid, but now they're a red lid bin. Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back a few years, they started shrinking the bins as well. So any new deliveries of general waste bins had gone from the big 240 litre bins down to the
160, I think it is.
Yeah.
And you got the yellow ones, which are 240 still.
That's right.
Yeah.
So according to the advertising that they've done around this FOGO program, they believe that 30% of general waste comes from food waste, which I would argue probably isn't true. Probably isn't accurate anyway. Certainly not in our house. And so based on that, they've reduced, while raising our rates, they've reduced the garbage collection from weekly to fortnightly. And what we've ended up with is people with overfull bins.
So what do you do with the overfull bins? What's your family do if you've got too much in your red bin?
Well, if we've had a few instances where we've had to take rubbish off-site. My wife's had to take it with her to work and put it in some of the hoppers. Sometimes we've used other people's bins, or sometimes you just wait and have garbage bags lying around until the fortnightly collection comes along.
Not terribly hygienic.
Not ideal, no. Not hygienic, no.
What do your neighbours think? Have you talked to other people in the suburb?
Yeah, I've spoken to some other people who are a part of the trial as well, and they tend to think along the same lines, that it's probably a well-intended idea as far as the composting goes, but it doesn't work terribly well when you've got more than a couple of people living in a house.
So basically, you'd much rather have that red bin collected every week?
Absolutely, yeah.
And compost yourselves? That's
right, because in our case at least, we've got our own compost bay at home. So, and we probably have no meat waste. Anything that is left over probably goes to the dogs anyway. So I would think we're close to 100% of our food scraps going into the compost, which means none of our general waste was food waste to begin with, rather. So for them to assume that everyone is putting 30% worth of waste as food waste is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit arrogant, really.
Yeah. And do you see is there any potential for that sort of bin, the green bin, isn't it? I suppose, for example, it'd be probably handy for units where people can't compost.
That's right, yeah. And I think generally it's not a bad idea to be doing this composting, and definitely in a situation like an apartment building where there is no yard and no opportunity for composting, then yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And have that service. And having this service isn't a problem in and of itself, but removing the garbage collection is...
So the big problem is removing the red bin.
That's right.
The bin everyone has and everyone uses.
That's right. Yeah. And I think what they probably could have done, and what they should do going forward, if they do roll this out citywide is consult with people and make it an opt-in service or an opt-out service, so that you're not just stuck with this green bin that you probably won't use. We've had it there for a number of months now, and we haven't come close to filling it once. There's been a couple of times where we've used it because there might have been some things left over, or there might have been some garden clippings that I didn't want to put in the compost, but it's never come close to being full, and it really just takes up space that we weren't consulted about.
Oh, well, Nikolai, look, thanks very much for sharing your views. And so a modification of the trial might be a good idea in terms of high-rise apartments and things like that, but for people who compost, much rather keep that weekly service for the red bins for general waste.
Absolutely, and let them opt in if they want, and bring back the service that we pay for.
Yeah. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.
Bye.